David was crowned at Jerusalem late 1004 BC, or possibly very early in 1003 BC. I want to say it was crowned on 25 Kislev, but I can't prove it yet. That is equivalent to, in math, when you're doing your math, call that 3103. It's really late in 3104 in Adam years. Late in 3103 in Adam years from Adam. So you have to use that. And God uses this as the deadline for Christ's birth. Okay, because 1004 BC, late in 1004 BC, plus a thousand years, you're going to see that down here actually. This is the 1,000-year criterion, is 4 BC, and that's going to be used for Christ's birth. But here, 1004 BC is another deadline, minus 490. Oops, I don't know why it's not working. 1004 minus 490 is 514. The temple had to be rebuilt, you'll see in Daniel 9 when we get there, by 516 BC. That was the deadline for its rebuilding. Otherwise, that was a promise in Jeremiah 25. So David's protection, his 490, is the only one running. Okay, well, we got Moses 1000, but remember what I showed you? It's the one that fails earliest. Okay, David, if you look here, David at Hebron, the 490 is the only one running. There's nobody else with a 490 running. Moses' 490 has run out by the time you get to the end of Hebron. Okay, the same thing for Jerusalem, which runs just 7 years longer. So there wouldn't have been a temple rebuilt if there wasn't a 490 belonging to somebody. In this case, it's David, but it's based on his crowning at Jerusalem. Okay? So his crowning at Jerusalem was, say, 1004 BC. Okay? 1004, and you might want to refine this. Minus 490 is 514. So it was going to run out. That's one reason why why God set up 70 years for the temple. All right? And I'm going to be refining that in the future, but right now I can't. Okay, now David retired from kingship 7 years before he died. This is something scholars do not know because they do not read the first 5 chapters of Kings before they just, pontificate on 1 Kings 6:1 and call it a scribal error. This is a prejudice. It is a nasty stain on the scholar's part. They are not paying proper attention to the first 5 chapters of 1 Kings, and they just dismiss 1 Kings 6:1 as a scribal error because it says it's the 4th year of Solomon. It's not a scribal error. It's the error of the scholars. And in 1 Chronicles 20 through the end of 1 Chronicles, it tells you more about what David did during his 7 years. He was preparing the temple. Okay? But the scholars dismiss that. They use Josephus. Josephus is wrong. Josephus says David died when he was 70. No, that's when he retired. Instead, he dies 7 years later. All right? And that's what 1 Kings 6:1 is telling you. All right? David would have been 80 in the year the temple started. That means he was born in the 400th year after the Exodus, which is very, cute. And he becomes king 430 years after the Exodus right here, because he's age 30 at that point. All right? The Bible tracks his dates, but we don't. That's the problem here. So David's retirement is in his first, because the 40 years is based on 1010 at Hebron. Okay, if 1010 minus 40, he retires in 970 BC. Okay, and 970 BC is equivalent to 3136 in this calendar. Okay, so you'll notice that all this is occurring during the voting window. Okay, because 3136 is right inside here. Because 3150 is the end of it. So David retires in 3136 BC. 3136 from Adam, which is 970 BC. He dies 7 years later in 963. Now, 970 BC, okay, 970 minus 490 is 480. Okay, his protection lasts until 480. Okay, well, but the temple was down for most of that. Do you see where God can justify rebuilding? Because there's a 490 from David still alive. The time grant is still alive. And you'll notice that that time grant is not this one, because this ran out in 520. It's not this one, because this ran out in 514, but it's this one, because Jerusalem had to be rebuilt also. Okay? And it turns out that the measurement for Jerusalem to be rebuilt ends at 446. Okay? But that's because the temple is already up and running in 516. Still, there has to be somebody with a 490 active. All right? And his death, that's 963. 963 minus 490 is 473. And that's really significant because Purim, okay, the attack on the Jews that Haman wanted, that's about the book of Esther, was the year before that. Okay, so God's obviously timing. These are stories that are told that tie to David's 490s based on these 4 dates. Okay, this one ends in 520. This ends in 513, 514. This one ends in 480. And this one ends in 473. And in each case, there's a very significant historical event happening to Israel a year or two prior to his 490 running out. Okay, now it gets even more dramatic. These are the 1000s. David's crowning at Jerusalem took place, I want to say it was 25 Kislev. It was late 1004 BC. Okay, he becomes king of all Israel at that point. Messiah has to be born king of all Israel. So Messiah has to be born within 1,000 years of David's crowning, because look, there is nobody after. This period here. The crowning at Jerusalem, let's show you how it ends. Okay, the crowning at Jerusalem, it takes place, it takes place in 1004 BC. So we subtract 4106 to get our years from Adam. So it's really 3103. Okay, so in 4103, Christ has to be born. Otherwise, the 1,000 years are up, and there's nobody with another 1,000 years to replace it. You see that?